Time Magazine and CNN named our next guest America's Best Preacher, and the 30,000 members who attend his church in Dallas would no doubt agree.
When he's not behind the pulpit, he's writing best-selling books, producing hit films, and hosting his own new talk show. Bishop T.D. Jakes, God bless you and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now, this is exciting. You have to tell us more about this television show you're going to be doing. It's called Mind, Body, and Soul, and
Yes.
it's going to be premiering on BET. So why did you decide to host a talk show?
Well, I'm both producer and host on the show, so it's T.D. Jakes Presents Mind, Body, and Soul, and it's an extension of our entertainment brand, what we've been doing in films and that sort of thing. For me, it was an opportunity to do something outside of the pulpit and address subjects that might not fit the pulpit, but were of interest to me as a human being.
So how does your work as a pastor influence the work that you'll be doing on the talk show? And all the projects that you're working on, how does your spiritual path influence those?
I think to a degree it does, because you're looking at maybe 36, 37 years of pastoral counseling. So the show has, not only do we interview entertainers and high-profile people, but we also counsel grassroots people, just ordinary people, their lives, their struggles, their situations. You can't do something 37 years and not have some experiences that inform how you think today.
Now, your show will air on Sundays.
Yes.
How will it differ from other talk shows out there? And will you be dealing with any of the messiness, like those paternity tests and all those things? No, I mean, you know, is it going to be like You're not the baby daddy, says T.D. Jakes.
Yeah,
I mean,
they probably get great ratings, but no, we're not going to be quite that dramatic.
Okay.
But we are taking on, I think people will see a different side of me, because people often define you by what you do rather than who you are. And I think they'll see another side of me. And we're taking on, we interviewed everybody from Marvin Sapp to LL Cool J, from Steve Harvey to the Bronner Brothers. So it's a wide range of people from different walks of life. We've done shows on gun control. We did a town meeting on gun control. I interviewed a young man whose baby was shot to death out of his arms in Chicago. So it's going to be a wide array of issues that we take on, and it gives me an opportunity to do something different from what I do on Sunday morning.
now, you're used to being in that chair.
Yeah.
So what's it like for you to shift and become the interviewer and not the interviewee?
It's quite a shift. It really is very, very different skill set. I think what I try to do is divorce myself from being the interviewer and focus on if I were counseling somebody, and that curiosity. I've counseled people on death row. I've counseled people in the White House. I've counseled people in the crack house. So I've got a wide array of that kind of experience. I've just never done it on camera before, and you get to watch me.
So tell us more about the other projects you're working on. I know you've been behind, great television shows. You've also produced hit films, including Jumper the Broom and Sparkle. And you're also behind the Winnie Mandela biopic. What made you go into that specific film?
Well, I love South Africa, and I've been to South Africa many, many times. First time I went to Africa was to Johannesburg and Cape Town, and just been all over South Africa. I think that its history in some ways is a reflection of some of the challenges we've had in this country. And Winnie Mandela is a picture of a very interesting character, and that particular show showed romance on the canvas of adversity. I thought it was a great opportunity. Jennifer Hudson, Terrence Howard. I mean, how can you go wrong?
Exactly. How can you go wrong?
Yeah.
Another one that I'm very excited about, what Jennifer Hudson is also in, is Black Nativity, which I understand comes out around Thanksgiving. And it's, chronicles that classic nativity story, but features an entirely black cast. Now, what drew you to this project?
Well, it's a Langston Hughes story that's been redone. It's both a musical and a drama. You've got Tyrese Gibson in it. You've got Angela Bassett in it. You've got a wide array of great actors, Forrest Whitaker and others that have put their talent behind it. I think it's going to be great for the holidays and great for the family, and I want to help people get their talents on screen whenever I can.
Let's talk about Heaven is Real.
Yeah.
It's actually based on a book about a 3-year-old who had a near-death experience and claims that he actually met Jesus Christ.
That's a Sony picture, and it's a great picture that we're going to release around Easter. So it's a great story that he said he came back and told his parents that not only had he seen Jesus, he says, but he also says that he had met his little sister who he didn't even know he had.
So his mother had miscarried.
Exactly. And so that book sold so many copies around the world. People are really interested, and I don't think anybody, regardless of your spiritual background, who's ever lost a loved one doesn't have some fantasy or fascination about heaven or life after death. So I think it's going to be a very powerful film.
Now, in addition to film, you've written over 24 books. My goodness, first of all, how do you find the time?
Right.
Do you sleep?
You know what? Not as much as I'd like to, but I'm writing a book right now. I really enjoy it. Right now, I'm writing a book about instincts, and it really comes from something that happened in South Africa. I was sitting between a Zulu and a zoologist. And we were going on a safari.
Okay, I would hope so.
Yeah. The Zulu understood the information about the animals, but the Zulu had the instincts about the animals. And I thought most of my life I have been couched between intellect and instinct. And intellect is wonderful, but instinct will show you where the elephant is. So I'm talking to people about finding your purpose, finding your goal. I'm talking about business. I'm talking about business instincts. Some of the most successful people in this country did not become successful because of their intellect alone. It was their instincts, and I'm talking about business instincts.
It reminds me of the tsunami. A lot of the fishermen knew to get out of the water.
Absolutely.
Because they were familiar with the water. It was innate to them.
They know something is wrong. Instinct. What do you buy? When do you buy? When do you sell, when to hire, when to fire. That nobody can teach you that. That's instinct, and business instincts will really change the dynamics in our community.
Now, you started preaching in 1980.
Was that an instinct?
At a store, yeah, was that instinct? At a storefront church in West Virginia. What drew you to the pulpit? Did you get a calling? Was it, like Shannon said, was it instinct? What was it?
I think it is a sense of a calling, an instinct, a purpose that was over my life. And I actually was preaching 3 years before that. I started pastoring at that point. I've been preaching 37 years of my life. Wow. And anytime you've been blessed to find that thing that you feel like you were born to do, that's a wonderful feeling.
It sure is.
And I think I was meant to be a communicator, whether it's on a stage or with a laptop or a computer or writing a script or telling a story. I was born to communicate with my generation, and whenever I'm communicating, I'm at my best. I'm happiest, I'm most fulfilled.
When you're communicating to your church, you have over 30,000 members, over 4 campuses. How did you go about building such a vast, fellowship?
I don't know, because I preached for years to 7 people. So,
Oh, really?
Yeah, I started out in West Virginia with 7 members in my church. So
what were those early years like? I would imagine they were pretty lean.
They were very lean, but I had nothing to compare them to. And when I look back at them in reflection, they were terrible in terms of suffering. But at the time, I had nothing to compare them to. And the Bible said, despise not the day of small beginnings. If I had not had small beginnings, I wouldn't have the foundation to withstand the vicissitudes of being who I am.
Wow. So when you look back at those days compared to what you're going through now and all the people you preach to, what goes through your mind? Is it a sense of accomplishment or what?
My foundation came through my early years, and I'm so grateful for it. The obscurity, the frustrations, they make you who you are. It's not the success that defines you. It's the struggle that defines you. And if I had not had the struggle, I couldn't have stood the success. Success is heavy. You have to carry it on something, and if you haven't been through anything, you can't handle it.
How do you handle being the head of a church? The burden sometimes, or just the overwhelming, awesome responsibility that comes with it. And who do you turn to in times of turmoil?
Well, first of all, you have to build a very strong team around you that helps to bear that load. You can't bear that load alone. The Bible talks about Moses couldn't bear it. I can't either. Second of all, you have to have a spiritual life yourself. You can't just serve the food and never eat any. You've got to eat that food yourself. And then you have to realize that you're not going to fix everything. You can't try to manage people's opinions. That's too lofty of an ideal for you, and you can't be God over people's lives. And once you start moving off what you are not and focus on what you are, you can go to bed at night. You can't control the weather. You can't heal anybody. You can't raise anybody from the dead, and you can't change how people think. Most of us are weighted down trying to do things that we are not designed nor created to be able to do.
How do you discern the difference? When do you know when to walk away?
I think a lot of times, if you know your purpose and it doesn't align with your purpose and your destiny, it's none of your business. Leave it alone. It's really simple. You don't have to be a rocket scientist, because it takes all of your energy, if you're going to be successful, to focus on what is in front of you, not what is around you, and definitely not what is behind you.
Well, when you talk about being successful, what do you say to some of those skeptics out there that look at the mega churches and all the money that comes in, and the preachers driving fancy cars, and they start to get a little leery about where the money's going? What do you say to those people?
First of all, I don't define success by money. That's number one.
Amen to that.
And number two, if they understood the backdrop of big churches, a lot of money comes in, but it goes right back out again. You got 300 people on staff. It's more that people got to be paid than the pastor there. 300 families are eating out of our church. So most churches, now there are scams in anything, but most churches are legitimate or the IRS would shut them down. In the event that the pastor, as I do, has other jobs and other interests, I've sold $5 million of one book alone, I ought to be able to afford a car.
Right.
You know, I should,
You got that
if you
right.
said 5 million matches, you ought to be able to have a car. So those kind of struggles I don't have. I think the thing that's most interesting is when you see a guy with 20 members and he's got a Rolls Royce.
Now that's a different story, right?
Yeah, but that never makes the press. But you know, there are.
Do you understand the skepticism?
Oh, I totally get it, and I don't even resent it. And I think in some cases it's justified, but not in all cases. You can't put all of any group of people in one category. And I think for me, in the early years, I went through a lot more of that. But after almost 40 years of being in the ministry, I think people know who I am. Except people who don't go to church and don't care about it at all.
Well, one of the interesting things I like about your church is that you teach economic well-being to your congregation and how you give them principles about building wealth in their own lives. So what is some of the more important advice you give to your congregation about money management?
You know, that advice has changed over the years. When I started out, it was about going to school and getting a job, and I think that's very nice and still important to do. But right in the economic conundrum that we're in right now, I think that we may have to become more entrepreneurial. We have to be prepared to hire ourselves. Some people are recreating themselves in the middle of their lives. They can't go back and start over again in terms of going to school. But there may be entrepreneurial pursuits where we don't see the hemorrhaging of the economy within our community, all the dollars coming out and none coming back in.
Do you see a return to faith because of the recession? Have more people embraced religion in hard times?
That's a very culturally induced question. In some people groups like African Americans have been more apt to go back to church. Other people groups are moving away from church. And the other thing that's interesting about church now, people are starting, because of social media, to ingest information through the internet. So they stream on. They don't physically go like they used to, especially people under 30. But just because they're not physically there doesn't mean that they're not streaming on. We have about 20,000 people a Sunday that stream on. You know, some of them go to Bedside Baptist. You know, they got a cup of coffee and some pajamas. And it's kind of different from me. I kind of like to see Reverend Sheets and Pastor Pillow. But as long as they get the information, that's what really matters at the end of the day.
But you would prefer them to come to church.
Well, I am changing. Initially, I would have said yes. You know, I think it's important that people get it any way they want to get it. And I can't control how they get it. That's a generational perception. I'm a little old school. I like to physically see you there. I think that's at its best. But I'd rather you stream on than not be on at all. Yeah, and that's why we do the movies. That's why we do the books. There's a lot of ways to feed people.
Yeah, you're a busy man. Actually, CNN called you America's best preacher. Now, what does an accolade like that mean to you?
It's amazing. It's humbling. And sometimes it's intimidating because in reality, the best sermon you've ever heard is the one you needed the most at the time you heard it. So in reality, you know, that's my focus. How people describe you, you don't worry about that, because the same people that say something wonderful today at another stage will say something terrible. You don't define yourself by what other people think. You humbly accept the honor when it is an honor and move forward with what you do.
All right, well, we hope you continue to keep doing it.
I will.
And we have the whole long list on your wall here. We'll go get the books, we'll go see the movies, and we will be supporting you.
Thank you very much.
Bishop T.D. Jakes,
thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Amen.
Amen.
And you're watching Arise Entertainment 360.